What's up, Bike Life gang? Welcome to another video. Today we're gonna have a look at the KTM 390 Duke. My bike is at the dealership. KTM was so nice as to give me this bike for a week, so I thought we should do some testing. We're gonna do some riding in the city, in the countryside. We're also gonna do some curves. I'll give you all my impressions and thoughts, so stay tuned and see you after the intro. The sun is finally out again. It's been raining for a couple of days, and I probably will have to give the bike back in a day or two. So fingers crossed that my own bike will be finished by then, but in the meantime I'm pretty lucky that I can test ride the 390 Duke. I actually don't even know what model this is, of which year, but I'll put that in the title, of course, so you guys will probably already know by the time you're watching. But I've never been on a 390. I've only ridden the 690 KTM SMCR. I've also had a 125 EXC and a 450 EXC, so that's just for you to know what I've been riding. So I've been in the KTM camp for a little while, but I've never been on a 390. So I thought I'd just give you my impressions, first impressions of riding a 390 Duke, and I'll probably make some references to the 690 since that's what I'm mostly riding these days. So this is the perspective of a 690 rider or a supermoto rider, and I hope that you can get some value out of this. So we're in the city right now, on our way out, and basically for the city so far, and I've obviously ridden it a little bit already in the city when I picked it up from the dealership. First impressions are really good. It's really nice. So basically, when you come from a bigger bike like the 690, for example, which really isn't even that big of a bike, but what you immediately notice is how fun a small engine can be in the city. Because I mean, of course you don't need a lot of power in the city, but when you are riding a small engine like this, you just feel a lot more of that power that the bike is putting out, and you have to actually switch gears and do a bit of work, whereas with the bigger bikes you're just sitting there and, you know, riding along. So that's been really nice, and it also packs some punch. I didn't expect that. Coming from the 690, I thought it would be, you know, a little bit slow for my taste, but it really isn't. It's you know, in the low revs it's a little bit weak, of course, weaker than a bigger bike, but for it being a relatively small capacity engine, I think even in the low revs it's doing pretty well. And more importantly, when you rev it, it really goes. It really goes. So I'll try to show you in a little bit, hopefully when we're on a bit of a country road, or when we go on the highway, we can really see it. By the end of the video I'll actually go on the German Autobahn, guys, which means no speed limit. So we're gonna put this thing through its paces, and probably or hopefully do some top speed testing. We can't go all the way to top speed. We'll get close at least. But yeah, look at that, it goes. It's so much fun, and I'm just going 60, and look, and you can throw it left and right as well. It weighs nothing. It doesn't feel like it weighs a lot. I actually don't know the weight, but when I was pushing it in the garage, it felt kind of similar to the 690, weirdly enough. But once I'm on the bike, it definitely feels a bit more nimble. So once we're outside of the city, we'll also do a little walk around and just have a look at the bike. But for now, what I can tell you and what you can see right now already is the speedometer. And some of you might remember how I complained about the speedometer of the 690, which is almost non-existent. And what I really like for an entry bike like this is the speedometer. I mean, it's a pretty nice big screen, and it shows everything you need. So you know, you have your gear indicator, your speed, you know how much you've left in the tank. I don't know if I'm getting old these days. Let me know in the comments if I'm getting old. I mean, I'm coming from EXCs, they didn't have any of that either, but I do start to enjoy these kinds of things. It's not like you really need a gear indicator, but for example, if you're doing wheelies, which I won't be doing on the bike that I'm borrowing, but if you're doing wheelies, I think that, for example, then a gear indicator can be nice, so you don't have to shift through the gears to know exactly what gear you're in. Okay, besides wheelies, I never really use it myself, but anyway, it's nice to have, right? And this is a much cheaper bike and has it included, so that definitely gets a thumbs up. All right, let's do a bit of acceleration, guys. Woo! It feels good starting to go out of the city and leaving all the traffic behind. So now we're gonna get on some longer country roads, and hopefully we can do a bit more acceleration testing. So let's see. And a little curve here as well, and it really feels good, guys. I mean, what can I say? I'm like super positive, and I have little things that I don't like so far, but it's because it's actually so much fun. I mean, it's really nimble. When you throw it in the curves, you hardly even realize that you're going into a curve. I don't know how to explain it, but it all feels very natural. Easy. So I don't know how fast this thing can go top speed, but it's doing 100 very easily. So I was in 5th gear and making 100 easy. Pretty nice. And the nice thing also for the European viewers, I mean, you can ride this thing with an A2 license, which is really cool, I think, because honestly, I would not, like I already said, I wouldn't need more power from my first bike. This is totally fine. About the gearbox, so far, shifting gears, zero problems. It's buttery smooth for me. I've had no false neutrals like you sometimes get on the 690s. So yeah, really good impressions so far. What I'm starting to not like so much is the seat again. And I don't know if that's just me, because I seem to have that with most of KTM's motorbikes. But yeah, it's already getting pretty uncomfortable, and I've been on the bike for 30 minutes now. And yeah, it's not the most comfortable. So, something else that I also don't love is the size of the bike. So I'm pretty tall. I mentioned that in another video before as well. I'm 192, or actually 193 meters, by the way. And yeah, this is a bit too small for me. So I can see how I'm a bit of a hunchback on it. And my legs, they are like almost coming up above the tank. It's not that bad, that's exaggerating, but it kind of feels like it all feels a little bit tight, you know. So for tall people like me, it takes a bit of getting used to. But at the same time, for it being a small bike like this, I think they did a pretty good job at making everyone fit into it. Because I mean, I'm not feeling totally uncomfortable. It's just, yeah, it takes a bit of getting used to. Okay, something else I just noticed is that the clutch is wired and not hydraulic. I always like to have a hydraulic clutch, especially because I actually have a bit of a medical condition on my left hand, so the hydraulic clutch is a bit easier to pull in and feels a bit more comfortable. But I'd say for a wired clutch this is very easy to pull, especially for a 390. And at the same time, you know, it does feel a bit cheaper just from the feeling of it. Woo! But yeah, it's not a big deal. And you can see how the bike pulls, right? I mean, you can easily overtake those cars. It's really quite nice. Radar coming up. You gotta know your radars, guys. Which actually reminds me, because I just had Kalimoto, the navigation app, tell me that a radar is coming up. Super useful. So I'm using Kalimoto a lot these days. If you want me to ever do a review on that, let me know in the comments, guys. Okay, so let's talk a bit about the design of this bike. I gotta say, I don't like it. Truth be told, I think they're much better looking bikes, but I would also say that it's mainly the graphics. If you slap on some nice graphics, this bike can probably look pretty banging. But as it is right now, and I will still do the walk around with you guys, yeah, it's okay. It's not completely ugly, but I don't really love it. I mean, in general, I have a problem, I think. Sorry guys, that was the GoPro dying just now. So I probably cut out midway through. But yeah, all I was saying was I don't really vibe with white bikes. I don't know what it is. So we're getting closer to the curves now, where we can try how this bike does when you throw some twisties at it. And I'm really quite excited for it, to be honest, because so far the little curves that I've done, they have felt pretty good. So I think I'll ride there now, and I'll see you once I'm there. So see you over there, guys. Here we are, guys, at my favorite curves. Why is that? Why are they my favorite? Well, that 50 speed limitation is about to be removed, which means in Germany you are allowed to go 100 kilometers an hour legally on country roads between towns. And you know, if we go a little bit over the speed limit, it should be fine. And that means we can really test this bike. So let's try and overtake this car so it's not in the way. And I'll let you guys enjoy. I'll shut up for a moment. And let me know what you think in the comments. How does this bike do in the curves? See if we can overtake. Shite. Come on, come on, come on. Ah. And let's go. It's quite busy today because it's a Saturday, so I apologize. Okay guys, so those were the curves. I'm gonna stop here now because I think this is a good spot to also do the walk around. Here we are guys, a little bit of a walk around of the 390 Duke. Yeah, so like I said earlier, I don't love the white, but actually I have to admit, now that it's outside and I kind of see it in the sunlight and it's not inside the garage, I think it's a fairly pretty bike. Sorry for the barking dog in the background. I hope you guys can understand me well with all the noise going on. But yeah, I mean, it is a pretty decent looking bike. I just would probably change the graphics, and beyond that I think it looks great. What I do like about it being stock, you know, the muffler or exhaust or whatever you call it, I think it looks quite nice for a stock exhaust. If you look at some of the others that these bikes are shipped with these days, I think that one is pretty nice. I think also, you know, the brakes, they work really well. So just now in the curves I did have to brake a little harder, and just the front brake really grips, really slows you down fast. I would say that the brake of my 690 of course performs quite a bit better still, but I would say, you know, for a bike like this, it's a really decent brake. Yeah, so this is what the bike looks like. I really like the front lights of the Duke models. I think it just looks really cool with the LED. And yeah, that's really it. That's all I have to say for the moment from the outside, and I'll see you back on the bike. Okay, while we get to the highway, a bit more feedback on the curves. So I did actually 2 more loops after the recording that you just saw, and what I realized is that, you know, I think the bike is really well balanced for the curves. It feels very natural to throw yourself in a curve. It feels very steady also at higher speeds. Something that you might have noticed is that I think I never even really exceeded the 100 km/h mark. So whenever I do this same stretch of road with my 690, in between the curves, I think I'm constantly over 100. So there's the good and bad about that. On the one side, you know, going slower feels a lot faster with this bike. So, you know, I had a lot of fun going through those curves still without having to break the law, which is, you know, that's ideal, that's great. At the same time, now that I did it a little bit more, I think it's just, for my taste, it's just lacking a little bit of power, you know, and that's complaining, or maybe asking a little bit too much. It's such a nice road here. It's maybe asking a bit too much, of course, of a small bike like this. But when I was, it was a little bit uphill, of course, and coming out of the curve and accelerating, you know, if you aren't perfectly in gear, which actually happened by accident to me once, that I was really 1 gear up too high, and you know, you're just lacking power for sure. So yeah, that's of course what you kind of expect from a small bore engine. Oops. And yeah, of course this 390 does have that limitation as well. But then again, you know, I think it's a lot of fun, and for a beginner rider it is probably ideal. I wouldn't really ask for more. Something else I noticed was that the front brake, like I said, works really well, works like a charm, but the back brake really isn't that convincing. So I don't think it does that well. It doesn't stop the bike very quickly. It has, maybe I'm just a bit unlucky with this bike, or I don't know when it last, you know, when the brake pads were changed the last time on this bike. But definitely it's not the strongest back brake. But then again, back brakes on a motorcycle aren't the most important part. I guess it does what it needs to. So in a couple of minutes we'll reach the highway, and then we'll do some high-speed riding tests and see how it is to also keep riding at higher speeds. You know, whenever you need to get somewhere between two places, you need to take the highway, and you might have to take it a little longer. We'll test that, and I will see you guys when I enter the highway. Here we are, guys. We have made it to the highway section. So I'm about to enter the highway, and I will shut up for this section again so I don't shout too much into the microphone. But I will let you enjoy the ride, and I will see you once I'm off the Autobahn again. I'm not sure if you guys can hear me right now, but that was pretty crazy. I think I reached around 150 kilometers an hour, and I can tell you that I would not want to go faster than that on this bike, but I'll give you my full feedback once I'm on the highway. We are getting off the highway, guys, so this means this is almost the end of the video. A bit of a wrap up of what I thought about the highway. I actually just did about half an hour on it, and in the top speed video that, or in the top speed part of the video that you saw, you could see me reach around 150 kilometers an hour. Let's let this guy in. And I wouldn't go faster than that, not just because this is a rental and I don't want to push it too much, but because it really didn't feel good. The bike started to feel quite unbalanced and shaky, and I don't even think that's so much because of the chassis or anything, or how the, you know, how the suspension are set up. Has nothing to do with that. I think it just has to do with the engine being pushed too hard and the engine just becoming really unstable, kind of. So yeah, it also wouldn't be healthy to keep the engine running at that speed. But also, and here's my only real gripe that I have with this bike so far now, I don't think you can even go 130 continuously on the highway with this, because at least I wouldn't probably want to do that, because I feel like I'm pushing the engine too much. So right now I actually ended up settling for 100, and that's what I felt like I was comfortable with, without hurting the bike too much. So yeah, I think 100 is a little bit too slow for me. If I'm gonna go on the highway, I kind of want to get it over with quickly. Then on the other side, it is a naked bike, so you know, with my 690 usually if I'm on the highway for really long, I end up slowing down to 100, 110 sometimes as well, depending on how windy it is. But I have the option to go faster, and you know, quite often I end up going 130, 140 when I want to make some distance, and you really can't do that with this, I think, for longer than maybe 10 minutes, and then I would definitely stop. So yeah, there is a bit of a trade-off there, but then again, it is a small cc bike and you shouldn't expect too much. So that about the highway. Some other final remarks. I started realizing that I'm getting more and more uncomfortable on the bike, so I would say it's not ideal for someone of my height, but it's fine. I've been on it for roughly 2 hours now and I'm okay. I would say I'm about as uncomfortable as I am on my 690, which is also known for having a pretty uncomfortable seat. So yeah, that's not really a big deal, not a reason why I would say you shouldn't get the bike. But I would definitely consider what it is you want to do. If primarily you're riding in the city, maybe you're commuting to work, this is the ideal bike. If it's your first motorbike, I think it's the ideal bike as well, because you know, it's not too powerful, but it still has a lot of power there to play with, and you can really enjoy the ride. Yeah, so that's really sort of the main people I would recommend this bike to, or maybe as a secondary bike as well. I would really enjoy this as a city bike just to play around with. But yeah, other than that, let me know in the comments what you think. If you think this would be a bike you would consider or not. Maybe you guys have had some experiences with it as well. Hope you enjoyed the video. As always, like and subscribe if you got any value out of it, and peace.